Welcome back to the channel. My people, what if I told you that the real enemy keeping Nnamdi Kanu in detention is not just in Abuja, yes, but in London? What if the same nation that once claimed to stand for justice is secretly working to destroy it? What if the same Britain that gave us colonial chains is now polishing those chains for the Nigeria government to use? This is not just another political drama. This is a deadly game, and the stakes are in Nnamdi Kanu's life. Every second that passes, his health is fading, and the hands holding him down are not only Nigeria but British, yes. Today we are going to expose how a group of US-based Igbo military veterans have dropped a bombshell accusing Britain of premeditated collusion with Nigeria to keep Kanu behind bars at any cost. And trust me, you will want to hear this to the very end, because the truth will make you see this case in a way you have never seen before. US-based Igbo military veterans accuse Britain of colluding with Nigeria to keep Nnamdi Kanu in detention. Reason to watch till the end. If you stop watching halfway, you will only get half the truth. The shocking details you are about to hear, from the extraordinary rendition in Kenya to the allegedly secret coordination between UK diplomats and Abuja, will show you how deep this conspiracy runs. The American veterans of Igbo descent, AVID, are not just any group. They are men who serve in the US military, trained to detect patterns of betrayal and covert operations. Their statement pulls no punches, naming Britain as a willing accomplice in Kanu's suffering. They claim that history is repeating itself, that the same nation which backed the Biafran blockade and fed the flames of war in the 1960s is back in the game, but this time with quiet weapons, legal manipulation, diplomatic cover, and deadly silence. The final segment will connect these dots, showing how Britain's colonial crimes of the past are tied directly to the silent war being waged against the Igbo today. Britain's silence is not innocent. When a government remains silent in the face of injustice, that silence can speak louder than any official statements. AVID says Britain's silence on Nnamdi Kanu is not the silence of someone who is helpless or unaware. It is the silence of someone who has made a choice, a deliberate decision to stand by and watch while pretending they are neutral. In the world of international politics, silence is never innocent. It can protect allies, shade crimes, and give permission without a single word. According to AVID, Britain refused to act is a clear political choice. They know Kanu was abducted from Kenya without due process. They know the Court of Appeal discharged him of all charges. They know international law have been broken, but instead of fighting for him, they hide behind diplomatic jargon like non-interference. Why? AVID believe it is because Britain still carries the same anti-Igbo mindset from the Biafra war era. Back then, they supplied weapons to Nigeria and gave political cover for the blockade that starved millions. Today, they are doing it with legal cover and diplomatic silence. Britain's silence is not harmless. It emboldens Abuja every day. They refuse to speak. They strengthen Nigeria's hand to keep Kanu behind bars. This is why AVID call it premeditated collusion, because silence here is a weapon. A British citizen abandoned. Nnamdi Kanu is not just a Nigeria-born Igbo leader. He is also a naturalized British citizen. That means Britain has a clear duty under its own law to protect him when his rights have been abused abroad. This is not a favor, it is a legal and moral obligation. Yet, what has Britain done? Almost nothing. According to AVID, the British government has tried to hide behind the excuse of dual citizen. They claim that because Kanu also owed Nigeria's citizenship, their ability to intervene is limited, but this is misleading, and AVID call it flat out lie. Britain's own consular charter say clearly, if a UK citizen is facing unfair judicial treatment abroad, making a fair hearing impossible, the foreign secretary must step in to protect their rights. In Kanu case, the abuse are clear: extraordinary retention, detention without trial, ignoring court rulings, and torture allegation. If this were any other British citizen, perhaps a white businessman or journalist, Britain would be shouting from the roof to the tops, applying sanctions and calling emergency meetings. But because it is Nnamdi Kanu, a Biafran agitator, they stay quiet. AVID say this is not ignorance, it is deliberate. Britain has chosen politics over principle, sacrificing their own citizens to please Abuja. It is a betrayal not just of Kanu, but of the very rule of law they claim to uphold. The ghost of the Biafran war. AVID draws a straight line from today's event back to the dark years of 1967 to 1970 during the Nigeria Civil War. Back then, Britain openly supported the Nigeria government against Biafra. They supply weapons, use their diplomatic influence to block aid to starving Biafrans, and justify it all in the name of keeping Nigeria united. The result, over 2 million Igbo men, women, and children die. Many through starvation caused by Britain back blockades. That is why many Igbo say Biafrans and are soaked in Biafran blood. Now, more than 50 years later, AVID say the same old ghost is haunting us. They believe Britain still see the Igbo push for self-determination as a threat to their interests in Nigeria, especially oil and political influence. So, instead of tanks and rifles, they now use silence, legal manipulation, and diplomatic cover to suppress the Igbo struggle. By doing nothing to stop Kanu's unlawful detention, AVID argue Britain is continuing the same genocide mindset during the war. The method have changed, but the aim is the same: crush the Biafran voice before it grow too loud. This is why AVID statement is so powerful. They are not treating Kanu's case as an isolated event. They are showing it as part of a much older, much deeper historical pattern of betrayal. The extraordinary redemption. Let's rewind to June 27, 2021. On that day, Nnamdi Kanu was in Kenya without warning. He was abducted, blindfolded, and flown to Nigeria. There was no court order, no extradition process, no legal hearing. This was extraordinary redemption, an illegal transfer of a person from one country to another. This act broke multiple international laws: the African Charter on Human Rights and People Rights, the UN Convention Against Torture, and Kenya's. It was a blatant disregard for legal norms, the kind of move usually condemned by the so-called international community. But what did Britain do? They issued a weak statement expressing concern, then went silent. AVID say this silence speaks volumes. If Britain truly opposed what happened, they could have demanded this immediate return to Kenya file a complaint at the United Nations, or even apply diplomatic pressure on Nigeria, but they didn't. Instead, AVID alleged that Britain looked the other way because the Rendition achieved what they secretly wanted: Kanu in Nigeria, custody, silence, and away from the international stage. The question AVID asked is chilling. If Britain could ignore such a clear violation of law against one of its own citizens, what does that say about their true intentions? In October 2021, British consular officials visited Nnamdi Kanu in DSS custody. On the surface, this may look like Britain was doing its duty, but according to AVID, what happened afterward raises serious questions. Not long after that visit, the Nigeria government amended the charges against Kanu, making them even broader and more difficult to fight in court. The timing is suspicious. How could it be that right after Britain visit, Nigeria suddenly adjusted its legal strategy against Kanu? AVID suggests that this was no coincidence. They believe there was a quiet coordination between British diplomats and Nigeria officials. In their view, it is as if Britain gave Abuja a nod. Proceed with their trial. We don't stand in your way. Why would Britain do this? AVID believe it is because they wanted to ensure Kanu remained trapped in a long drawn out legal process, one that would weaken him physically, mentally, and politically. By keeping him tied up in endless court battles, Britain and Nigeria could achieve the same goal without an outright execution: remove him from the Biafran struggle. This is why AVID called for a parliamentary inquiry into the roles of the British High Commission in both Nairobi and Abuja. They want the truth about what was discussed behind closed doors during and after that October visit. The discharge is not acquitted narrative. When the Court of Appeal discharged Nnamdi Kanu of all charges in October 2022, it should have been over legally. That ruling means he should walk free, but the Nigeria government refused to release him. AVID says Britain quietly helped Abuja by pushing the dangerous idea that discharge is not acquitted. This phrase, not even rooted in clear Nigeria law, gave Nigeria authorities a public excuse to ignore the court decision. According to AVID, this is not just a legal misunderstanding, it is a deliberate tactic. By twisting legal terms, Britain and Nigeria could keep Kanu locked up while pretending they are respected due process. This narrative also buys them time to keep Kanu isolated, weaken his head, and limit his political influence. To AVID, this is more proof that Britain's role is not neutral. It is strategic, calculated, and deeply hostile to the idea of justice for Kanu. Conviction at any cost. AVID believes Britain's goal is not justice, it is conviction. No matter the evidence, no matter the court ruling, the end game is the same: make Kanu guilty in the eyes of the law. Why? Because a conviction would permanently stain his political image, making it harder for him to rally international support for Biafra. It will also serve as a warning to others. This is what happens if you challenge Nigeria unity. According to AVID, Britain wants this outcome because Kanu's voice is dangerous to their interests. He has repeatedly called out Britain's colonial role in creating Nigeria's unstable structure. He has exposed how one Nigeria was built on exploitation, not unity. In Britain's eyes, silencing him isn't just about helping Abuja, it is about protecting their own reputation. AVID's demands are clear. Britain must publicly condemn Kanu's illegal retention, demand his release, investigate his diplomat action in Nairobi and Abuja, and stop supporting this shame trial. They also demand parliamentary scrutiny to expose who in Whitehall has been pulling the string behind the scene. AVID warns the history will remember Britain's choice if they continue down this path. The Igbo people will not forget, and the world will see their silence for what it is: active participation in the destruction of justice. If Kanu dies in detention, AVID said the blood will be on Britain's hand, and not as bystanders but as enablers. My people, the battle for Nnamdi Kanu's freedom is not just his fight, it is a fight for the soul of our nation. From the accusation of British collusion to the silent war being waged against truth, we must remain awake. The world is watching, but with the heart. That depends on how loud we speak. Don't let this message die here. Share it, talk about it, and demand justice. Freedom is never given, it is taken. And for Nnamdi Kanu, for Biafra, for justice, the time to act is now. Hashtag justice for Nnamdi Kanu. Hashtag free Nnamdi Kanu now.